high and the mighty will fall. There will be no power brokers, the wall of power will fall. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Wall of Power, a radio hour. This is your host, Paul Metsa. We've got a great man on the show tonight. He happens to be a friend of mine for the last 25 years. The Reverend Guy Drake, who recently retired as a deacon at the Episcopal Church, little church west of Minneapolis, was a part of a great folk duo in the 70s and 80s called Johnson and Drake. They performed in concert with such artists as Jim Croce, Earth, Wind, and Fire, Linda Ronstadt, REO Speedwagon, and Bonnie Raitt. They've got a new record out, their first new record in 40 years called We Loved Our Freedom. And we're going to be talking with Reverend Drake for the whole show tonight. Rev, how are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. How are you doing, my friend Paul?
I'm feeling good, and it's good hearing your voice. You know, it's 40 years since your last record. What the hell were you guys up to in the meantime?
We were writing songs.
Okay.
We've been writing songs since 1967.
Wow.
We've got, I mean, at this point we have over 130 unreleased songs.
Wow.
We're really good at getting them written. We're not very good at getting them recorded and released.
Leave that to your kids. I know your son Rusty works with you a lot. With the technical parts of what you've got going on with the new record.
Yeah, he's part of the team.
Tell us about how did Johnson and Drake come together, and what was it playing like back in the 67, 68, 69 around the Twin Cities? I'm very curious about that.
Well, our situation was kind of unusual. Tom and I met in high school, started writing music together at high school. We both ended up at the University of Minnesota. And we had already started writing songs, and we just kept writing songs. I write the lyrics, Tom writes the music, although we both cross over into each other's territory on that a lot. We did a show in 1970. We put together a bunch of songs that we had written, and we put on a concert over at the Crawford Livingston Theater in St. Paul. And anyway, we had Sound 80, which was a big recording studio in those days of the Twin Cities.
Oh, legendary!
Yeah, legendary. Their remote recording team came out and recorded the concert, and it got back to Herb Pilhofer and the guys at Sound 80, Tom Jung and those guys, and they called us up and said, well, you know, we'd like to make an album with you. We don't have any interest in managing you or anything, but we would like to, you know, make some music with you. And that was kind of the start of the whole thing. We started recording at Sound 80, and then eventually signed a contract with Ovation Records. We put out a couple of albums before we got the record contract. We put out albums that we used just to get gigs. And we were signed to a booking agency that was very connected into the college concert scene. And so they used us as an opening act for all of these other artists. What they would do is they would, you know, you mentioned Croce, Earth, Wind, and Fire, Linda Ronstadt, REO Speedwagon, all those. What they would do is they would buy so many dates from like REO Speedwagon, and then they would sell those to the colleges at a profit. And then they needed an opening act. So Tom and I were on the road from like 1970 to 1975, just as an opening act for all of these different artists that this company had signed deals with. So the interesting thing about it, we were based in the Twin Cities. We recorded in the Twin Cities. We were buddies with all the other bands in the Twin Cities, but we hardly ever played here. We were always on the road.
Wow.
You know, we did shows with Bonnie Raitt and different things like that were local. But we were basically always on the road.
What did the audience for Earth, Wind, and Fire, one of the greatest black bands to ever grace the stages of America, what did when they saw the two white guys come out, the cute little folk duo, how did that go over?
We had quite a few experiences like that, where the audience looked at us and tried to decide whether to walk out or not. You know, we played. We were the opening act for some really, really intense heavy metal groups, like Spirit. You know, and here we were, the two guys and a spinet piano. You know, but it went well. We loved touring with Earth, Wind, and Fire. They were such an incredible band. It was just, we would finish our set and then we would just run over to the side of the stage and just watch their set every single night. You know, and usually the opening act, just once they're done, they walk off and do their own thing. But you just couldn't. They were so irresistible. You know, you had to see them. And Linda Ronstadt was a lot the same way. She was so funny because backstage she was very quiet. This was in that period before she became huge. She had been in a group called the Stone Ponies. Mm-hmm. And then right after this tour was when she released the album that had all of the hits, so she was very, shy and quiet backstage, didn't say much or anything. And then she'd walk out on stage and she'd go, "I've been cheated." She'd open her mouth and this voice came out that was just absolutely unbelievable. That woman could really sing.
Where were those gigs with Linda Ronstadt?
Pardon me?
Where were the gigs with Linda Ronstadt?
Well, let's see. The one there were a lot of them, but I remember that we played the Corn Palace in Mitchell, South Dakota.
Sure.
With them. And you know who her band was? I don't know if you know this story, but
I do. But you tell us.
Yeah, it was the Eagles.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're sitting backstage, and the opening act sits with the band. They don't hang out with the artist, but they hang out with the band. So we're sitting, backstage every night with Bernie Leadon and Glenn Fry and Randy Meisner and all these guys, and we're just yakking. We're road warriors. They're road warriors, and they're like, "Yeah, man, we're all in LA and we're gonna do our own album, and we're gonna make our own album." And it's like, "Oh, okay, all right." And then like 6 months later, this album comes out called The Eagles. And boom, they were the biggest thing in the world.
Well, it must have been kind of a hanging with the Eagles. Did it kind of give you that peaceful, easy feeling?
Yeah, they were good guys. They were, totally pleasant guys to hang out. Which is not always the case when you're the opening act. A lot of times, the headlining act treats you like dirt,
Right.
But they weren't like that at all. And then it happened again. We did a tour with a guy called Lobo. Do you remember Me and You and a dog named Blue?
Sure.
And he had recorded that album in Atlanta and had this fabulous band, that we just went crazy over. That just great musicians. And like 6 months after that tour, this album came out by a band called the Atlanta Rhythm Section.
Oh, right. Right.
And they named themselves that because they were just session musicians. And Lobo had walked in one day and did sessions, and they played for it, and they ended up touring with them, and then they just took off and became gigantic,
Leaving Johnson and Drake in the dust once again.
That's the story of our careers, being left in the dust. Yeah.
Well,
writing songs that never get released.
But the new record, called We Love Our Freedoms, will be having a record release party this Thursday night, July 16th, at a beautiful 318 Cafe in Excelsior. I played there. I love the club and the people.
So do I.
And if you want to get tickets, there's a possibility of a second show being added. Go to the website, which is spelled out 3-18.com, THREE-18, EIGHTEEN.com. And go check out my friends, Johnson and Drake. Now, where is your buddy Johnson? What part of the country does he live in?
He moved to Springfield, Illinois several years ago. His wife got a fabulous job down there, and she's a nurse, and they moved to Springfield for her work, and he's lived there ever since. So he in fact is right today while we're doing this interview. The reason he's not here is he's driving from Springfield to Minneapolis, which is a 9-hour drive, so that we can start rehearsals tomorrow for the show at the 318. It's a little hard to do rehearsals when you live in different states,
Yes.
Recording is one thing. I got a studio here. He's got a studio there. We use the same software. We're always passing back and forth tracks and vocals and, and stuff like that. But rehearsing for a live show, you got to be in the same room.
No doubt. Now tell us about the song we're going to hear off the new record called Mile Marker 61.
Well, that was a song that I wrote during the first Trump administration when he was really rattling sabers with North Korea. And this is a long time ago now, but it was Mile Marker 61 is the turnoff of the highway to our family cabin that we've been going to forever and ever and ever and ever. It was actually my wife's family cabin. Her father bought it in about 1950. And so what the song was really about was about the fact that, hey, if because North Korea was threatening to send nuclear missiles to the U.S. and all this kind of stuff. And it was talking about, because we had always said this with our kids, if any really big national emergency happens and we can't even talk to each other, can't get a hold of each other or whatever, head for the cabin.
Yeah, right.
We'll meet at the cabin. That's where we'll be. So that's what this song is about.
We'll listen to that, and then we'll have the Reverend Guy Drake on for the whole show tonight, talking about the storied history of Johnson and Drake.
Station to station, running from the sun. Got to keep on driving to mile marker 61. Used to take 3 hours, now it's taking days and days. Mile marker 61 is still a long, long ways away. Marker 61's got to get away. Marker 61's still filthy gray. Marker 61's and got to be saved in a long, long road.
hear that beautiful music done by the divas from the Iron Range, my bumper music for my show, Wall of Power Radio Hour. That means you are listening to the Wall of Power Radio Hour, and this is your host, Paul Metsa. I have my friend and musician and recently retired pastor, the Reverend Guy Drake, on for the whole show. Guy and I met, about 25 years ago. I was playing at Nye's Polonaise Room in Northeast Minneapolis, where I had a house gig. And my friend, actor, musician Chris Mulkey walked in with this gentleman who we're speaking to tonight. Do you remember that night we met, Guy?
Oh, I sure do. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about, I tell my friends when I'm hanging out with Mulkey, and I've hung out with him all over the Twin Cities. We went out, we saw a Bob Dylan show in Los Angeles. I stayed with he and his lovely gal Dana in Venice, and everybody came up and was getting autographs from him. We were in front of the Pantages Theater. One guy walked right by him and got my autograph, I think probably thinking I was Brad Pitt. But anyway, if I tell friends, if you're cruising at night, with the clicker, cruising through the channels, 1 out of 10 shows you're going to see has a Chris Mulkey cameo of some sort.
Right,
and,
right.
How did you and Mulkey get together?
Mulkey and I were, I started out as an actor. So did Tom, my musical partner. We were both actors. And we, all three of us, were acted at this very obscure theater in St. Paul that we knew as the Barn. It was the Eagle Ridge Theater. It was in a barn on a guy's piece of property in Mendota Heights. And anyway, I was like 15 years old. Chris is a couple of years older than I am, and we met there. But then both of us kept acting, and we both ended up at the Children's Theater Company for several years, doing shows together and doing tours together. And when we would tour, Chris, who is a very assertive personality, as you know, Paul, and he was a very assertive personality even when he was 18 years old.
Right.
He told everybody at the Children's Theater, he said, Guy and I are driving the truck. There was a truck and a bus.
Wow.
And the truck only seated two. And he said, Guy and I have the truck, and nobody argued with him because he's Chris Mulkey.
Yeah, right.
And if you've ever seen him in a movie, some other really, really good friends of mine, we took to see one of Chris's movies one time. The one that took place up on the Iron Range. What was that one called? Anyway,
it was called North Country.
North Country. And he played.
I met Chris. I was trying to get some songs into that movie.
Yeah.
And somebody said, get a hold of Mulkey.
Yeah.
They filmed part of that in my hometown of Virginia, Minnesota. So I did. We've been friends ever since. Neither one of us got songs in the movie. There's this folk singer from Hibbing, Bobby Dylan or something like that.
Yeah, I never heard of him. Yeah. Well, anyway, we took these friends to see a movie that movie that he was in. And after it was over, Gloria, the woman in this couple, turned to me and said, how could you ever be friends with a person like that? And I said, it's called acting. And she said, no. She said, no one could be like that and not really be like that. And I said, Chris Mulkey is the greatest guy you've ever met in your entire life. He's the most loyal friend, the most loving father, the most loyal husband, and she didn't believe me. She thought he's such a convincing actor that she thought that he was this character that he played in North Country.
Well,
years later, we had Chris was in town. We had them over, and she met him, and she was like, well, gosh, he's really a good guy. I'm like, yeah, duh, we've been friends for our entire lifetime.
Well, I described Chris's role in that movie. He plays an a-hole miner, which is redundant. I grew up on the range. I could say that. I know a few of them. They're not all bad. In fact, I just spent the weekend with my cousin Keith Balke, who spent 40 years at Mintac and retired with pride, and a good union guy as well. So I meet Chris, and then I meet Guy Drake, and you at the time were working with the Dale Carnegie organization.
Yeah, I worked for Dale Carnegie for 40 years.
Wow.
Did you mention or ask me the question about what happened during those 40 years between albums?
We're getting to that, but I want to find out a little bit. Tell the kids out there that are listening who Dale Carnegie was.
Dale Carnegie, he conducted the very first Dale Carnegie course in New York City in 1912. He was a guy who taught public speaking and then eventually wrote a book that was a huge bestseller called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And today the Dale Carnegie organization has operations in 86 countries globally. It's hundreds of millions of dollars a year in business, and very, very successful company. And I spent 40 years with those guys. Tom and I, we toured and wrote very extensively in the early 1970s and all the way up to the mid 80s. And then it was hard to, we were both married by then, and touring like that was tough and
right
and everything. And both of us just went and got jobs.
Right.
We're like, I'm going to get a job where I get up in the morning and I take a shower and I go to work and he joined a music software company. I joined Dale Carnegie. He stayed with his company for 40 years. They got bought out and sold a couple of times, but he stayed there the whole time. And I stayed with Dale Carnegie for 40 years. But the whole time that was happening, we were still writing music and still working together and doing all that. We just weren't doing any shows. We weren't releasing anything. We just were building up this catalog, which now consists of over 130 unreleased songs.
So Guy Drake, back when you guys were touring constantly and working, how many records did you have out back then?
We had the main. We had an album that we put out before that was for getting gigs. Then we released the album called Carry It On, which was kind of our big album. That was in 1973. That was one of the songs off of that album made it into the commercial for the Samsung Galaxy 7.
Wow.
in 2017. And that was a big shot in the arm for Johnson and Drake. We had
a big shot for some of that mailbox money.
Yeah, we had the money to go back and restore all of our albums because we are the absolute king of recording albums and not releasing them. So we had an absolutely incredible album that we recorded with Billy Berg and Jim Johnson, Jim the Flim, Bill, Flim and the BBs.
Oh yeah, well,
the BBs were Bill Berg and Billy Barber.
Yeah,
and Flim was Jim Johnson, and they were and Billy Berg and Flim were our rhythm section for 74 and 1975, and we recorded this album called Migration that we didn't end up releasing until 2018.
Well, all good things in time. I'm a little bit on the other side of that coin. I've released, 11 or 12 releases, cassettes, CDs, 45s, and albums. And I'm proud to say, Guy, all of my recordings have officially gone linoleum.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Man, that is great. Congratulations. Boy, well, I
Hey,
guess if you wait long enough, it comes to you, right?
well, I'm too old to join the FBI. I really have no other options here
Yeah.
for meaningful work. Say, we've got,
But we have three albums that are, it just to answer your question, that
yeah,
besides the new one, we have three albums from those days that are available, like on Spotify or YouTube or whatever. One from '73, that's Carry It On, the one I just talked about. And then we did completely restore the Migration album. It was lost for 50 years, and we found it in a box in my attic. I've lived in this house for 40 years.
wow.
And we thought it was completely lost because Sound 80 threw out all of their masters. They destroyed all of their masters, and we thought that was the only version of that album that ever existed. So that, but it turned out that we had a version. It just didn't have the background vocals on it, and we restored. My son Rusty, just worked on learning the software and so on, and we restored the whole album and then added in the background vocals to our lead vocals 50 years later.
Right. With the children's choir.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah,
guy,
nowadays we sort of change the key when we do things live.
say, we're going to take a little left turn here because you had the privilege of opening up for Jim Croce, who just blew up in the early 70s with Big Bad Leroy Brown. But you've got a very sad story about that, and share it with us before we hear the song you wrote about it.
Well, we toured with Jim as his opening act for 6 months straight in the early part of 1973. We released Carry It On in January of '73. And then for the next 6 to 8 months, we were on the road almost constantly with Jim and with his guitarist, Maury Muleisen, just flying from town to town to town and got to know each other very well. You're having breakfast in these motels, you know what I mean? Dining rooms and so on.
And he seemed like just a great guy.
Oh, he was such a good guy because he had just been doing nothing but living on the road for about 10 years himself as a touring musician. So he wasn't egotistical at all. He was just like, "Hey, how are you guys doing? Oh, great. Where have you been playing? Oh, yeah, well, we were in Texas, and then we were in Oklahoma." And he says, "Yeah, I've been doing the East Coast." And,
Yeah.
he was just like totally, the best way I could describe Jim Croce is he was just a working class guy.
Yeah.
He was very blue collar. He drove a truck to make money because you just don't make money as a rock and roll musician.
Right.
That's why Tom and I went and joined two corporations. But he was just a real down to earth guy. And anyway, we were on the tour, and we had tickets. We were going to be playing Natchitoches, Louisiana, and then we were flying that next night. We were flying that night on a commercial flight to Florida, and just 2 nights before that Natchitoches date, our record label called and pulled us off the tour because they wanted to reshoot an album cover, and they flew us to back to the Twin Cities and to for this photo session, and we left our road manager with Jim because then that gave him an extra set of hands and so on. And we left just for 2 days.
And what was your road manager's name?
Kenny Cortese.
Okay.
And so we left just for 2 days, and we were sitting in a recording studio in a photography studio at about 2:00 in the morning in this photo session. The night of that Natchitoches gig. And we had the tickets for the commercial flight that next day. But just before we were getting on a plane to fly down for that gig, they called us and said that they had booked an extra show for Jim that they were going to do in the afternoon. They were going to fly him to another city first, and then they were going to fly him to where we had tickets to down in Florida. And there weren't enough seats on the airplane for a duo. They weren't going to fly commercial, which we always did. They were going to fly just a small plane. And so there was this up and coming comedian from LA named George Stevens. And they flew him in to Natchitoches to cover that gig. And they kept us in Minneapolis. And then we were going to catch up with the thing back down in Florida while we were doing this photo session. And it's like 2:00 in the morning, and we're sitting in this photo studio, and the radio comes on and says, rock star Jim Croce was killed in a plane crash tonight.
Wow.
In Natchitoches, Louisiana. Yeah. And that was, and of course, we knew everybody on the plane except George Stevens and the pilot, because we had been touring with Jim and Maury for half a year. And of course, and Kenny was not only our road manager, he was one of our very closest friends, you know. And so that was just an unbelievable blow, you know. And I'm 21 years old. You're not at my age now. Okay, I've experienced grief,
Right.
You know. I've seen people, you know, leave, but I hadn't had anything like that happen, and it was just devastating. And we kept going. Johnson and Drake kept going. We kept going for 2 more years and everything, but it was just like it just sucked the life out of everything that we had been doing. It's so hard to describe.
Wow.
But I'm sure you can imagine what a blow that was.
Well, that's in such a tragic end for all involved. So now we're going to listen to a song off the new Johnson and Drake record called When We Were Young that describes that experience. And then have Guy on for the rest of the show on the Wall of Power Radio Hour.
Talking yesterday about the times we had when we sang and played our songs, sensitive and sad when we were young. Every day we flew somewhere and opened someone's show. Mason, Prophet, Linda, Ronstadt, one called REO when we were young. Then there came the tour we played with Bad Leroy Brown. Then there came the day we missed the plane, when they came and told us that our good friends had gone down. We weren't the same. We were unaware of who our bandmates were back then. Linda's band went on to make the Eagles soar again when we were young. Hit the road with Lobo's band had such a...
Welcome back to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metsa. We're having a most enjoyable conversation with the recently retired Reverend Guy Drake. The new Johnson and Drake record, After 40 Years, is just out. We're going to be listening to the title track at the end of the show. But I wanted to jump back in to talk to Guy a little bit about Jim Croce's guitar player, who I was a big fan of, because back then, Don Kirshner's TV show and other ones, you'd see Jim with Maury. Tell us a little bit about Maury. Give us his name and how much you loved listening to him play guitar.
Yeah, Maury Muleisen. He was, when you think about songs like Operator in particular, that one stands out every time I hear it. it's got that beautiful, beautiful finger picking acoustic guitar, and that all of that, and you listen to it now, whatever it is, 50 or 60 years later, and it sounds more brilliant than it did even back then. And Jim, basically, what he would do as a guitarist was he would just weave in and out of Maury's playing, and Maury was the world's nicest man. He was just a soft-spoken, easygoing guy, just a very, very, very kind, great personality. And I've always felt that he is sort of an unsung hero of those days, because and you, Paul, as good a guitarist as you are, and I don't play the guitar hardly at all, and compared to you, but you would appreciate just how brilliant he was as a player.
I remember the clips I'd see when they would do television performances. I was always knocked out by them. Speaking of great musicians, tell us some of the musicians that played on the new Johnson and Drake record.
Well, we did most of the album that we worked on this album. Tom, we worked with Tom and a guitarist by the name of Paul Peterson, not St. Paul.
Yeah,
but a different Paul Peterson, Pederson, who was also a guy who's been gigging in the Twin Cities for years and years and years, and in various bands. His most recent long-term gig, well, at any rate, it was with a band called Leadfoot Larry, but. Anyway, Paul's a very good friend of mine and a member of my church, and he and Tom really conceived a lot of the playing on this album, and so all the great guitar work you hear on this is Paul Peterson, and he's going to be playing with us. There's just going to be the three of us at the show that we do at the 318. We have a drummer as well, and but for the sake of the amount of rehearsal time we had available with Tom driving up from Springfield, we just decided to go with a three-person band. But that's between Tom and by the way, he's also Paul Peterson is also a terrific keyboard player. He didn't even play guitar in Leadfoot Larry. He played keyboards. So we get the advantage of having a guy who can play anything on keyboards and anything on guitar in our band, which is, as you know, is really a nice thing to have.
And of course, we need to mention again the record release show this coming Thursday, July 16th at the 318 Cafe in Excelsior. And that is, the website is 3-18.com. 3 and 18 are spelled out. I was listening to some of the tracks. Who is the great chromatic harmonica player?
I don't know. I would have to ask Tom on that, because it's somebody that he knows.
Well, it's really
it's a Chicago-based person. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, some great musicianship on this record. We've just got a few minutes left, Reverend. Tell us what is in the future. Do you see doing shows outside of the Twin Cities?
Well, I'm not sure. We're kind of contemplating that. What we're hoping to do is we're really hoping to release about 6 new albums. And that's just the new material. We've got 2 albums that we're restoring from 1971 and about 1974. And we're really focusing on the recording aspect. Because we want to get this music out for people to hear. And as I told you, we've got 130 songs. So we can put out a lot of albums right now.
What is your website, Guy?
It's johnsonanddrake.com, and it's not Johnson & Drake. It's like the 318. It's johnsonanddrake.com.
Well, wonderful. I always appreciated times with you over the years, and your lovely wife Nan, and I look forward to seeing Malky again when he comes back to town. But this song we're going to hear, the last song, is close to my heart. It's called "We Loved Our Freedoms." So let's talk about your political leanings that go into this music.
Well, this is kind of interesting because I wrote the song during the first Trump administration, and then as things unfolded, we kept saying to ourselves, "Oh man, it's too bad we didn't release that song because look what's happening. Look what's happening. Look what's happening." And of course, and it just kept increasing and increasing and increasing in relevance. The song, it's so much more relevant now in light of, just the clearest way to explain it would be in light of what happened in Minneapolis in the last year or so. It's just been an incredible thing to watch that happen. So that finally, when it came, we finally got around to getting the song released and the album actually done. It hadn't, its time and its relevance hadn't passed us by. It had actually just really arrived. And it's, I think that the words pretty much speak for themselves, but the one thing I want to say as a lyricist about this song is that I'm particularly proud of is that it has a 5-syllable word in it. Now, how many songs do you know that have a 5-syllable word?
None of mine.
Yeah, because the opening line is there's a time I remember when this seemed impossible. Our potential for goodness seemed inexhaustible.
Touche, Reverend Guy Drake. That's a great way to end this interview. If I was in the Twin Cities, I'd be at your show once again Thursday night, this coming Thursday, July 16th at the 318. I look forward to meeting Mr. Johnson one of these days. Thank you so much for your time, Guy.
Thank you, Paul.
And
great.
And let's not wait 40 more years until the next record comes out.
No, that's not going to happen.
All right, Guy. Peace, brother.
Peace.
Talk to you soon.
There was a time I remember when this seemed impossible. Our potential for goodness seemed inexhaustible. There was a time I remember when a man could stand or kneel, when we had mutual faith in the things that were real. I remember when truth was a virtue, when we were ashamed to lie, when we were free to live in peace, when we weren't afraid we would see our children die. We loved our freedom.
Thanks for listening to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. The show is produced by Paul Metsa, engineered by Patrick Loya. We'd like to thank our guest, the Reverend Guy Drake, from the great folk duo Johnson and Drake. You can get my records and books at the Electric Fetus in Minneapolis. I got a big show coming up with the all-new Paul Metsa Group with New Permanent Saturday, August 22nd at Moe's in Mounds View. Be there or be square.